music that is truly derived from African heritage contain that unique ancient wail of the soul, that shout, that release, that unabashed cry of the heart which links us with our brothers and sisters of the past. Now, some will say it's caused by environmental and social factors. Whatever, however, and wherever, for me, its essence must be tapped. You can't know where you're going until you know where you've been. And waiting is the spirit of ages that is and always will be the ancient source.
Good evening and welcome to Ancestors and Answers. I am your host today. My name is Roberta Ridley. I am the Chairwoman of the African American Genealogical Society of Fort Wayne, and I thank you for joining me this evening. There's been a lot going on that needs to be talked about, and we've missed a couple of opportunities to hit a home run here and there, but nonetheless, we are here today to talk about what needs to be discussed. And a couple of different things that we're going to go over, and we're going to start off by talking about what I like most of all. What are you reading? What have you read? And what do you need to read? And so with the African American Genealogical Society, aside from doing very intense work in terms of the records that are readily available here at the Allen County Public Library, you have the opportunity to do your genealogy research in depth in ways that you cannot do it in other libraries and major learning institutions. The holdings that our genealogy department have are continuously growing, and needless to say, as a result, is a continued amazement at what you can find and how you can do it. Ancestry.com has done a wonderful thing throughout the years of their growing in terms of their collection, and we have a very good relationship, this library, with Ancestry.com. And the good part about it is if you're doing genealogy research, you come to Allen County Public Library and you have access to Ancestry.com, and it doesn't cost you a penny. It's a good thing to know in case you're sitting there saying, I don't know why I'm watching this, I don't think I'll be able to find anything, I can't afford to pay for it. You don't have to afford to pay for it. Your taxes have afforded it for you. So here at Allen County Public Library, this is the way, the place, and the opportunity to get your feet really wet in the search in the river of history in terms of genealogy. I say that because we have some events coming up very soon, and that event that we're going to talk about tonight is the Family History Month. Allen County Public Library does a major programming throughout the month of October every year. And that particular event that's coming, you saw that just flash on the screen, and you're going to see it flash a few more times throughout this evening's presentation. And we, as a society, in conjunction with the Allen County Public Library's Genealogy Department, will be doing a presentation entitled Making the Records Talk. We'll get into that a little bit more as we move on. Before we get into it, I want to introduce a couple of books to you, reintroduce it to some of you, but I want you to take into consideration the subject matters and how records can be beneficial and what is good to do when you have no idea how to go about doing certain research. You have to fill your mind with history, documented history that tells you what it is that you need to know. What happened? What happened to the people? What happened to the people, both the enslaver as well as the enslaved? How did they do what they did? We can be arrogant about it in terms of perhaps the enslaver, and we can be angry and possibly feel shamed about the being enslaved. But if you don't know what was going on and how it was going on, then you can't research to find out what you need to know. And we need to understand what happened, how it impacted so many people's lives. And we are very, shall I say, we're not confused about how people became enslaved. Contrary to some soap opera versions that people like to tell themselves, nobody came running out of a thatched roof hut or tent or cave or any strange thing like that saying, hey, I'd like to go with you guys. I don't know a thing about you, and I don't know what you're eating over there, and I don't know how long the ride is, but I'll go. I'll go be your slave. Nobody did that. Nobody did that. And nobody was thinking that they were going to have a better opportunity. And particularly, they were not, shall we say, enamored with the idea that a mother is giving up her children to complete and total strangers who they have just witnessed slaughter her husband or her son or take them and go in opposite directions. That part right there needs to be understood, and it needs to be understood intently and very deep in the marrow of our bones and in our psyche. That is what happened. It does not matter, so to speak, that there was warring between countries, there was warring between tribes, so that there was interaction with the enslaver as well as dominant tribes on the motherland, on the continent, where people sacrificed other villages and other tribes in order to have monetary or political gain, as the case may have been. What happened was families were torn apart, they were abused, they were murdered, and they were kidnapped and brought to a country that they knew absolutely nothing about for the most part, because that could be another conversation too in terms of exploration prior to mass slave trade. One of the things I want to talk about as far as that is concerned is when you are trying to learn, you must be willing to read. If you don't read well, sometimes a subject that is of interest to you will help you learn to read better. And it will help you to find books that will enlighten you so that you can learn what it is that you want to know. On that note, one of the books that I'm talking about first off today, and I have introduced it to people previously on this same program and at various events, Slavery and the Making of America. This is a topic that a lot of people really don't understand, and they don't like to talk about it. And one of the big ones that make me gasp real hard is that was a long time ago. That was a long time ago. Yeah, you're right. It was a long time ago. But there's a lot of things that happened a long time ago that are still going on today. People still eat, don't they? People still look for coverings in terms of clothing. People need shelter. And people have always sought knowledge to know how to do what needs to be done. My point is there's slavery taking place around the globe in places that you may not think of. And there's different ways for a person to be enslaved. And the more things change, the more they stay the same. We have to be very careful how we move forward in terms of what can go backwards. So learning the techniques, the policies, the laws, the social engagement that allowed such a horrific and damning institution to continue here in this country for almost 400 years, and to have to fight to continue to have the freedoms that were accomplished, it is important to understand how it happened and why it continued and why it continues today in various forms. Sidebar on that comment is when we do our research properly, we find that there are African Americans who are imprisoned today in totals that exceed the number of African Americans or Africans who were enslaved prior to the Civil War. Those figures will make you gasp. And one would ask themselves, is it truly about voluntary criminal activity that causes them to those numbers to be higher? Or is it because of the way the laws are applied to that minority group, whereupon they are incarcerated in greater numbers for the crimes that they commit that are the same of the dominant culture, Anglo-American individuals who do the same crimes, but they don't get the same time. So bondage has a way of rearing its ugly head in a lot of different ways. And the temperature today across the country, and dare I say around the world, is giving us reason to make ourselves a little bit more familiar with what we escaped, that we fought for, that we came together on, so to speak, and still have to work at making sure that rights are protected. Slavery and the making of America. Let me lean on that last part. The making of America. It's not a joke, and as you can see by the cover that is shown to you on the screen right now, that is a book that was put together by James Oliver Horton and Lois E. Horton, very recognized historical researchers, and it is an easy read based on the information that is being disseminated and how it's put to you in order to think about how America was made. So we'll go ahead and take a look at something else following that particular publication. I mentioned that we have a few books to talk about. I'm going to put this one on here, but before I set it up for a good shot, Slave Breeding, Sex, Violence, and Memory in African American History by Gregory Smithers. This publication also is a necessary read. People have tried to, if I dare say, use the phrase, romanticize being enslaved, as if as though, once again, somebody raised their hand and said, oh, take me. Let me be your whipping post. Let me be the woman that you violate in ways that cannot be put into decent words. Babies who were murdered for no reason, stolen from their parents and their family, and sold away in order to make sure that they could pay for the new furniture that they're going to have. Little boys being used as foot warmers for ailing enslaved Anglo-American individuals. The types of things that happen are not me guessing, me trying to push out a let's get mad at Anglo-Americans. That's not the point at all. It's about understanding the impact that this sort of treatment had on the individuals who were enslaved, not by choice, by political and monetary standards of greed is how it happened. And when you take children and use them in ways that you would not treat your cat, your dog, your pigs, your horses, and other people that love those children have no way of protecting them, standing and watching this sort of disgusting behavior, sexual violation, using the child as a footstool. So a 4-year-old child has to be on their hands and knees for hours on end while this person props their feet on their back on the front porch because that's what he got him for. That's what he's there for. And oh, he'll take his feet down so that the boy can go and get him some more tobacco for his pipe. There are stories that have been written, stories that were shared directly from the enslaved human beings, that these sorts of degrading and humiliating and hurtful, painful things that were done, they were told in their own words through slave narratives that have been collected from these individuals prior to, actually, they started collecting these stories prior to emancipation, but following emancipation, very openly talking about what they experienced. There are people who, enslavers, family members of enslavers, who have expanded on these stories in terms of what they regretted, what they regret about what they did, or what they did to try to make it better because it's just the way it was, so to speak. And one story that comes to mind as I share this information with you is a woman who forgot that she had sold a woman away from her property to pay another bill, and the woman was the mother of a 5-year-old little boy. And that 5-year-old little boy was left in the cabin by himself in the dead of winter. No one to bring food, no one to bring heat, wood for a fire, no shoes, a blanket, but it's freezing with snow on the ground outside. By the time she remembered that this enslaved woman had a little boy, and they went looking for him and found him almost frozen to the floor of the cabin that he was in. He, in fact, ended up having to have his feet amputated as a result of frostbite. This is a slave narrative that is found in our very own Indiana slave narratives. And this is what happened to that young man. Now, one might say, well, she didn't do that on purpose, but she sold his mother on purpose. So why didn't she know that there was a child that needed to be taken care of? These things we have to contemplate and ask, how do you fix the impact of such an experience on the psyche? How does the impact of the psyche of that child, knowing that he was left like that, not knowing why, so to speak, not understanding the impact or the so-called guidelines of bondage, and then he has to have his feet cut off. Now, she took care of him. She took care of him, and she saw to it that he had proper treatment, medical treatment for his amputation. In part, they took out not all of both feet, but she took care of him. He was still her property, and she still kept him to do what was what. And unlike a lot of enslaved stories, he did get enough training and teaching in terms of reading that she was able to hire him out at a much higher rate and make money for herself as well as for him. The stories are not the same, is my point. The stories are not the same across the South, across the North, on the East Coast or the West Coast, and it did take place throughout America. Breeding was an opportunity for financial gain, and so there were breeding plantations. That is all that they did, were make sure that women were violated and that their children were sold for profit. I would like you then to take a look at the next selection for today's program. And I think we got a good shot there. Thank you. 33 questions about American history. You're not supposed to ask. You see that the author there is Thomas E. Woods, Jr. This is a challenging read, things that you have probably contemplated, why this happened, why that happened, why lies about this, what are the myths as they relate to government, race, money, that make us look at the American history a little bit different. This is one, I'm gonna grab it real quick here because I wanted to share some of the topics in here for you to encourage your reading. Look it up, see if you want to dive a little bit deeper. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about or bring to light was, did capitalism cause the Great Depression? Did Martin Luther King Jr. oppose affirmative action? Were states' rights just code words for slavery and oppression? Some things that really do make you go, and you might know a little bit about it, you may know a lot about it, but how do you synchronize it into your psyche as to how you see things today and what it is that we are dealing with and what we need to talk about a little bit more. We need to talk about a lot of this as citizens of these United States, as residents of Allen County in the state of Indiana, neighbor to neighbor, parishioner to parishioner in our churches, in other words, and also in the family, because families differ. You might have 12 people in your household, mom, dad, and 10 kids. I guarantee you all 10 kids don't agree with everything that mom and dad said. They didn't do everything that mom and dad told them to do. And everybody can't express themselves exactly like the other one. So we do want to make sure that we respect each other's opinions. We need to be able to share what we know with each other and ask questions and be able to have a conversation about what is taking place in this country today and understanding what happened prior to what's taking place or has taken place in this year that we are in, 2025. We need to have a conversation, and you need to look back and find out about what it is that you are standing on. Your genealogy. Yeah, it always comes back to that. What were you taught? What do you know? What do you understand about the ancestors and what it was they put on the table for you? What did their ancestors put on the table for them? And we go back to try to find out exactly how it was. That is where the African American Genealogical Society of Fort Wayne comes in, based on the fact that there are millions of books here and across the country about the European experience when it comes down to the family history. And when it comes to African American history in these United States, it is most difficult, to put it mildly, in some cases, and quite a bit so more in other cases, difficult to do the research that needs to be done without having to do Anglo-American research right along with it. If you are the enslaver and you have chattel property, then you are, in most cases, required to offer certain benefits and treatment to the enslaved people, and they were people, contrary to what the government wanted to identify as being 3/5 a human being. 3/5 a human being made it okay for enslavers to violate 3/5 human being females to procreate more product for them to sell or to take advantage of their carnal wishes. But government classified them as 3/5 human. Therefore, rights were removed. Were your ancestors involved in that? Did your ancestors participate in providing bread or rice or corn for the ships that sailed across the ocean and brought these people back? Were your ancestors conflicted in if whether or not this was quote unquote a Christian thing to do? So therefore, they followed the guidelines or the laws, whichever phrase fits their, shall I say, determination as to what was fitting, of 2 pairs of shoes a year and 2 outfits a year for the enslaved individuals. Then you have those who were taught how to read to the extent that they could read the selected books from the Bible that would allow them to preach to the other slaves that which the enslaver thought was enough for the enslaved people, as they considered themselves to be Christian. Records tell you a lot of things. They tell you a lot about the enslaver. They tell you a lot about the enslaved, those who flourished in education, those who brought with them mastering skills and trades that had not been experienced throughout Europe, but they had been in regular use and creation on the continent of Africa. And so different areas brought different skills and different trades. Enslaved people brought rice grains in their hair, certain tools that they braided in or covered up in their strong, curly hair. And they were able to bring a little bit of home with them that later became products that enslavers made a fortune off of. Knowing how to do irrigation. The lists are so long, you would be amazed if you've never thought about it, how many patents were written as a result of African enslaved people here in this country. But those people who had those skills did not get those patents. The enslaver got them. So that brings me to the real conversation for tonight, and that is making the records talk. On October the 18th, 2025, that is a Saturday, we're going to have a full day. We're going to call it a full day workshop. It's a summit and a workshop kind of all involved. As you can see on the screen, I'm sharing with you the publication flyer that we have out, and that is, as I stated already, Making the Records Talk, where we will feature Mr. Timothy N. Pinnick and Mrs. Janis Forte, 2 very accomplished, and I do mean accomplished, presenters that will be coming to Fort Wayne. They've been here before, and in many cases, when they were here, there was a charge attached to the attendance of these individuals' presentation because, as I said, they are accomplished, and they bring a wealth of knowledge in terms of records that they have researched that many of us are not familiar with or have access to the way they have based on their travels and their academic research to try to find this information in order to have it disseminated to everyday people who don't know where to start. So Making the Records Talk is, Tim, as I said, Tim will be doing 2 sessions, Toolbox Building 1, 8 Essential African American Resources, and Toolbox 2, 50 Noteworthy Books for the African American Researcher. And Janis, Minor Forte, she is going to do a very intense presentation, 7 proven strategies for identifying slave ownership and reconstructing slave era families. If you have done any research in that area, it's not always easy. One thing that people often don't think about or may not even be aware is that when enslaved people were traded or sold, gifted, oftentimes the surnames changed. They would change. And a perfect example would be if an enslaver's daughter is about to get married and she was gifted a slave, an enslaved child at an early age. That is her friend, her handservant, maidservant, sometimes graduating or accomplishing seamstress capabilities. And she knows this young lady, in many cases, better than her own mother. So when this young woman decides that she wants to get married, she is going to want to have that enslaved girl with her because she knows the temperature of the bathwater and when it's right and when it's not. She knows when to bring her her breakfast. She knows how she likes her dresses made in a certain kind of way, in a certain type of fabric. And in many cases, the style of her hair. She knows her enslaved mistress well. So when the mistress decides to get married, she is then gifted that enslaved little girl, young woman now likely, and she becomes the property of the daughter and her new husband. It's plain and simple. If she grew up in the household of the Smiths and she is gifted to the Smith's daughter, when young Lady Smith gets married to Mr. Glockenheimer, she's not Smith anymore. The enslaved girl is Glockenheimer, and the young lady, the enslaver, is Glockenheimer. But what if, in the process, Mr. Glockenheimer dies 5 years later, and the young Mrs. Glockenheimer has 2 children that she needs to figure out how to take care of? She's going to marry rather quickly, and she's not going to be Glockenheimer anymore. She's going to be Mrs. Shoecraft. There's 3 names that the enslaved little girl has been attached to. And if in the course of this time she herself has had a child through any means necessary, what is the name of that child? Was she a Smith? Was she a Glockenheimer? Or was she a Shoemaker? Making the Records Talk. She's also going to talk about not being able to find people, which bridges on to what I just talked about. They're not on the census, using non-traditional sources to identify slave holders. There's a lot attached to that as well. Researching enslaved African Americans prior to 1865 presents a difficult but not impossible task. Identifying slaveholders, reconstructing family units, and finding missing kin are primary research goals. We need to know how we're going to find them What do we look at? What are we overlooking? They're not on the census. They most assuredly are not. And here's a real brain burner. Enslaved people were not even documented for the most part until 1850, when there was a slave schedule in the census. And oh, lucky us, as we look back trying to find this information and we connect it to a surname that seems pretty solid in terms of being able to get the information, all of a sudden we open up a slave schedule. 1850 and 1860 are the ones. There's no name. So let's go back to our first example. So there the young lady is who was a Smith, and Miss Smith married the Glockenheimer, and then she married the shoemaker. You go to the slave schedule for 1850 when she should have been Glockenheimer, but she's not on there as a Glockenheimer, and her name is Susie. There's no Susie Glockenheimer. Now there is maybe a Mary Glockenheimer on the census, and Mr. Robert Glockenheimer, who had 12 slaves. But what it says on the slave schedule is female, 15, boy, 13, woman, 35. Doesn't say what the name is. So which one is she? Which one is she, and how do we know that it's ours? Now that's another conversation that we get into when we do training with the people who are doing research and can't go any further. But Janis Minor Forte is going to give you some really good information on this. And again, I'm going to tell you that thanks to contributions from our community who are sponsors for this program, it is free to people who would like to attend in person or on a hybrid presentation. You would need to go to the, you want to go to the African American Genealogical Society's website and select events in order for you to register for this, or you can also register through the genealogy department's events program as well. You can, like I said, check us out on Facebook, or you can go into our website and do the same search to get yourself registered. Seats are limited, people, and I can assure you that they are filling up very quickly as I speak, and very happy to see that people will come and benefit from this, because it's never too late. But if you wait, you won't even be able to get started. We don't know how many records are going to be destroyed, thrown into the Atlantic Ocean, have a bonfire on Thanksgiving instead of a nice turkey. We don't know. We do not know. And time is of the essence, and the ancestors do await you to discover what it is that they survived in order for you to be here. I am talking primarily today about African American genealogy. And the one thing that I have discovered in the years that I have intensely done this work, we're all in this together. Like it or not, whether you know it or not, we're all in this together. People have been lied to about what was necessary and what was done and how people accepted bondage as such, how people were lazy and uninformed and didn't do and didn't know how to. Well, you can only punish people so much. You can only hurt people so much, till some people will feel like it doesn't matter. What I do, it isn't right. No matter what I do, I'm not respected. No matter what I do, I'm not loved. And then there's habits that are taught to where those who are supposed to be our protectors did not know how to protect. All they knew how to do was survive. But there's stories to be told, and there's lots of stories out there that we need to research and find the bottom line and share the story. I get a lot of people ask me, when I do this research, will I know what ship they arrived on? That depends on you. That depends on how committed you are to doing your research to find out the rest of who you are. I am totally stoked and excited for everyone that will attend the upcoming event, Making the Records Talk, presented by Timothy Pinnick and Janis Forte. I want to also throw in, don't want to omit this information. We do have some very useful information being disseminated at this program by our own genealogy department librarians. It's one thing to know that the information is here, but how do you get to it? What do you look for? What's in a book? What's in another website? And what's in another collection of sorts? There's so much that you can look into. And I don't know why the library wasn't full all summer with kids being assigned things to do research on as far as who they are, where did their parents come from. A lot of people don't like to talk about it because there are things that are embarrassing. Well, there's some things that are embarrassing to everybody, and you would be amazed as to what one person considers to be amazing and somebody else considers to be ordinary and commonplace. I encourage you to come and participate. Again, the starting time is 9 a.m., finishing at 5 p.m. on Saturday, October the 18th, and on Sunday, October the 19th, the following day, because we plan to shove the information onto your plate, stack it high. And then on Sunday, the 19th, you have the opportunity to come into the library to the genealogy department and research using the training skills that you have learned with Mr. Pinnick and Mrs. Forte, as well as the information, as I stated, that you will receive from the Allen County Public Library genealogy librarians. I'm very excited about this, and using the non-traditional sources to identify slaveholders, that's going to be an undertaking that I'm sure many of you would like to sink your teeth into. And books will be available from Mr. Pinnick. And I might add that we also are offering a very nice assortment of vendors for this event as well. And those vendors range in terms of product and services that they are going to offer. But they will be here as well on Saturday from 9 to 5. I think I have given you about as much as I can share without spoiling it. If you have questions, we have shared the email address on the screen for you. You can always go to our Facebook page as well and put questions in. Staff will respond, and we hope that you'll do that. I hope that you'll have conversation with your family and choose somebody to come and represent you if the job keeps you from coming, and to learn what it is that you need to know in order to discover the rest of who you are. Learn how this horrible event that created our country has now come to a point where it is truly our country as well. And I do say our as I speak as an African American woman who has descended from these roots. I think each and every one of us could stand to sit and have a conversation about what it is, because once we have an understanding about who we are and we feel good or informed about who we are, we can have a decent and healthy conversation about how we can respect and love each other, as opposed to hostile and dangerous things that are being perpetuated. My name, again, is Roberta Ridley. I am Chairwoman of the African American Genealogical Society of Fort Wayne. I thank you for listening. I hope that you have questions and that you will contact us, and more importantly, that you will come and participate in our event on October the 18th, Saturday, from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., and research on hands with assistance on Sunday, October the 19th.